Okay, welcome to Off Script, the Dream Pitch podcast sponsored by Tiller. Each week, we're joined by closers who are actively pitching and closing deals from some of the biggest names in tech, and we're asking them about their dream pitch. So what are their favorite prompts for rapport building, discovery questions, objection handling, closing, and also the mistake they'll never make again. This week, I'm joined by Alex, who's from Blue Optima. Hi, Alex.
Thank you very much for having me.
No worries at all. So before we jump into your dream pitch, let's get to know you a little bit more. So do you want to start by telling us a little bit about Blue Optima and your role there?
Let's start with my role then. So as of Monday, I made the exciting move to head of sales. But
Congratulations.
Thanks. But for the previous 2 years, I've been an SAE there, so actively closing deals. As a company, so we're a tech scale-up is probably the best way to describe us, and what we have built is a benchmarking technology that allows you to measure the productivity of software developers. So traditionally quite a hard thing to measure.
Yeah.
For anyone who works with software developers, it's very much self-reported.
Yep.
It's very much subjective.
Yep.
So we look to provide sort of C-suite directors, VPs of engineering, something that's a little bit more objective. That means they can make actual strategic decisions around their software state. But also at a developer and team level, how do we help with developers write faster, better, leaner code? So yeah, that's Blue Optima.
Awesome. Okay, and so who are you selling to on a daily basis?
So anyone who has a lot of software developers that they need insights into. So this could be financial, insurance, tech, food and beverage, anyone really that has sort of more than 300-400 developers that they need a bit more visibility on.
Wow. Okay. 300 or 400 developers is a pretty big team. Who's heading up that team? Is it the CIO that you're having to reach out to initially, or I imagine they have similar people to like RevOps?
Yeah, so it depends on the size of the company. So 300 developers could be all of the developers. So you're having a conversation with the CIO, the CTO. 300 developers could be 300 of 8,000. So you could be talking to anyone from a director to a VP to the group CIO to the business unit CIO. Yeah. So yeah, it's a range, which makes it interesting. Every client is different. Every conversation is different. Yeah. You don't know what you're going to get.
Nice. Great. Okay, well, that leads me into why you're in sales and what made you take that step. So why are you in it? What do you like about it?
So I guess like the majority of people, I stumbled into sales.
Yeah, congrats.
So I come from a scientific and research background. I did my PhD in chemistry. At the end of that PhD, the funding had run out and I needed a job. And the most recent relevant bit of work experience on my CV was a summer cold calling for Scottish Power, which was fun. So that was, sitting at a desk with a dialer, waiting for the beep, and then there's a person on the other side and you've probably interrupted their dinner.
Yeah.
So you can imagine what 99% of the responses were.
Yeah.
But it was an interesting time to be selling gas and electricity. Prices were going up.
Yeah.
And Martin Lewis had just appeared on, so the Money Supermarket guy, had just appeared on this morning and told everyone Scottish Power is the last company to be offering fixed prices at the old rate. So if you can switch over to them now. So our hook was, did you watch this morning? Did you see what Martin Lewis said?
Yeah.
And when they said yes, you can say, well, today's your lucky day. I'm calling from Scottish Power.
Nice.
But so that was the most recent thing on my CV that was relevant. So I was looking at, okay, what sort of jobs could I do at that? Could I get into a call center? And when I was looking through job descriptions, there were a lot of graduate kind of like account executive, account manager roles that looked really interesting, that looked like the sort of thing that I'd like to do. I think fundamentally, I'm quite a curious person. It's like my scientific background, and I like to help people. So I think that lends itself well to sales, and I guess to sales leadership, and it's why I'm where I'm at now.
Yeah.
But I think the reason why I stayed in sales is because I'm curious. Oh, I'd like to think I'm curious. Probably not as curious as I could be when I'm listening back to some of my calls. But I do like helping people, and whether that's helping clients achieve what they want to achieve, or whether it's helping my team smash their numbers and take home big bonus checks.
Yeah, you got a whole team of people to get them big bonus checks now. Make the CFO your enemy.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Just in terms of your career in sales, have you had a mentor who's a mentor that's kind of supported you and guided you, or a couple of them? How have you had that in your career?
So I'm gonna talk about curiosity again.
Okay.
But my first MD, a gentleman called Nick Stevens, and I've never seen anyone more genuinely curious and happy to speak to a customer about their day-to-day, about the problems they faced, about what they're working towards. His face just lit up when he was speaking to people, whether in meetings or at conferences. And I think it's that sort of infectious curiosity that makes a great salesperson, and it's something I've tried to replicate through my career.
Yeah, great. I think it always helps having that person that you can look up to and find those things that can inspire you to then pull those into your own work.
Yeah.
I think a mentor is not someone that you just call and go, my life's terrible. I'm doing terribly at my job. Can you fix it for me?
Yeah.
It's about the person that inspires you to push that part of you that isn't strong to a strong point, because you learn it from them, right?
Yeah,
I think that's
exactly.
True. So my last question on you, as a future mentor, what apart from curiosity, what are you hoping to inspire your team to learn from you?
Ooh, great question. I think a good salesperson is curious, but they're also empathetic, and they have a good understanding of the buyer. There are all sorts of statistics and reports out there about the shift of power away from the salesperson and towards the buyer.
Yep.
And I think as salespeople, that's something we have to adapt to, and that's something we have to realize and understand. Otherwise, we're going to get left behind, and there's going to be no need for a salesperson anymore. So yeah, I like to think that I always try and understand what the buyer's going through, and how best can we set ourselves up to support that. I don't think it should be a sales stage process. I think it should be a buying process, and how do we guide the customer through their own buying process. Yeah.
Nice. I really agree with that point. I've obviously we're doing a lot in work in AI and sales, and the one thing I kind of keep coming back to is what I'm really excited about with AI and sales is that the kind of the harder parts of remembering everything you need to in pitch and having that information at hand immediately in order to answer a question, that can be started to take over by AI, whereas what definitely won't be, and where we need to be really strong, is the empathy side and the curiosity side. So that is going to make you that will make you strong for the long term.
Yeah, I think we talk about this in engineering, and I think it's applicable to salespeople as well. But you won't lose a job to AI. You'll lose a job to someone who can leverage AI better than you.
Yeah, 100%. Totally agree. Cool. I'm going to put that on our poster. Not that we have a poster to sell, but it'll go on a poster somewhere. Okay, great. Well, let's jump to your the second part of the pod, which is on the main off-script bit and what your favorite prompts are for the ideal dream pitch that you'd have. So we'll start with rapport building. So beginning a conversation. What are you asking, and how are you starting that?
So I think rapport building is really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And I imagine you've asked questions in sales interviews, what makes a good salesperson? And the response you get is people buy from people.
Yeah.
And I think, yes, they do, but more importantly, people buy from people they trust. People buy from people who they think have credibility.
Yeah.
And the quickest way to lose trust and credibility is turn up on a first call and spend the first 5-10 minutes wasting their time talking about the weather or talking about the football at the weekend.
Right, yeah, good.
So I think when it comes to rapport building, the best thing you can do at the beginning of call is be really clear around the reason for the call and what value they're expecting to get from it. Good. So in terms of a prompt, I think it would be around what is the objective for the call and what are the expectations, what you like to get out of the call and what should the customer expect to get out of the call. Yeah. For me, that's the best way to build rapport. That being said, you can have some great conversations with the right sort of people. Some of that's cultural, some of that's personal. For example, I had a very long, in-depth conversation with a CTO of a security software firm in America because he had a lot of guitars in the background.
Right, yeah.
Do you play guitar? Yes, I play in a band. The conversation starts.
That's rare because most people have guitars in their house and they don't play it, or I'm still learning. When did you buy it? When I was 12. Still haven't learned. Yeah, great. I think that expectation setting builds that trust immediately. People are busy, and especially with the industry you're in terms of buyer profile, you're looking at less kind of relationship build on outside of their work life, but definitely relationship build on what's going on in their life. And what they want from you is, my time's precious. Can you please explain to me why I'm here and how you're going to help me? Yeah. And I think that works really effectively, and I can definitely see how it work with your audience without especially. Okay, so you've told them what to expect. You've promised them their time is going to be well used, and then you say, but let me interview you for 45 minutes about what your problems are. So how do you do an effective discovery?
So I think you've hit the nail on the head there in interviewing someone for 45 minutes.
Yeah.
Especially when it's a outreach, when it's an outbound conversation. You've cold called them, you've given them a short pitch, and they've agreed to a longer call. You have to earn the right to discovery. Discovery fatigue's a real thing, and if you spend 20 minutes asking a lot of questions, that your answers are going to get shorter and shorter, and that rapport is going to disappear. So I feel like you have to earn the right. On a first call, I like to try and do some research. I like to try and present a point of view, and I like to try and link that to potentially what I've either seen in the news or what's in their annual report. So I think my question at that point is, once I've sort of flashed this slide or two up, is what have I got wrong? And the responses can be varied. Sometimes you've hit the nail on the head, and that's great, and you've gained that credibility. You're starting to earn that trust. You've offered a point of view, and then you could go into how you potentially solve for what they're trying to do. Or people like correcting people. So when you've got it wrong, they'll be happy to tell you. I had a call with a European insurance provider. I spent all this time going through their annual report, picking out a few key points I thought were relevant and how Blue Optima can support. And none of it resonated in the slightest. But he then told me what his concerns were, what was, to be cliche, keeping him up at night, and why he was interested in Blue Optima. So it doesn't necessarily have to be right, and that's probably why I like the question, what have I got wrong? But it does show that credibility and that sort of, you've put a little bit of effort in, and it gives you it earns you the right to ask some follow-up questions.
Yeah, I definitely have been guilty of some pitches recently where I'm like, okay, I haven't researched enough. I'm just going to ask a really open question and really hope they don't tell me off because they clearly haven't done enough research for this call. And I think demonstrating that research does build that trust. And whether you get it wrong or right, you're there to try and learn and showing your curiosity, right? And I think that's it. It's what's amazing about that is it's so unique. It's like a sensible thing to do, but it's still so rare to see on a pitch. So
I've heard of someone who will intentionally put wrong details into slides like that. One, just to see if the client's paying attention, and two, to see if the relationship is there where they'd call them out on it. Nice. If they don't call them out. Either they weren't paying attention or the relationship isn't as strong as they thought they would. But I don't know how I feel about intentionally putting wrong information in client-facing stuff.
I don't know. I like it. It reminds me of back in the day where you used to do cold calls, but you had to try and get movie titles in the bingo. It's just shouldn't be doing it, but you've got to get through 100 cold calls somehow.
Have you seen Super Troopers?
Yes, I have. Yeah.
Where they, how you do meow? Is that
no?
Trying to get meow into everything.
Oh. Yeah, well, yeah. So, anyone listening, how many meows can get in your calls?
Cold calls. I think Tiller would pick up on that.
Yes. Yeah. We're gonna have to build that in now. Bloody hell. More work, not for me, but for Duncan.
Add it to the roadmap.
Great. Okay. So, objection handle, technique or way of approaching objection handles. How do you go about doing it?
How am I going to sound? I don't like the phrase objection handle.
Okay.
People don't like to be handled. Buyers don't like to be handled, and they know when you're trying to handle them. Maybe this goes back to the curiosity and empathy piece. I prefer objection understanding.
Okay, nice.
So how do you understand where the objection is coming from?
Yeah.
And for this, I'm going to steal something from Chris Voss and never split a difference.
Yeah.
And a bit of mirroring. So when someone says an objection, you just throw it back at them as a question. Oh, we're really sorry, that's too expensive. Too expensive? Oh, we haven't got the time right now. You haven't got the time right now? And people they'll reaffirm the objection, but because you've thrown it back at them, they'll probably phrase it in a slightly different way.
Yep.
And that will give you a little bit more information.
Yep.
And then you can start digging down. Oh, yeah, we don't have the budget right now. Okay, and it goes on, and you start peeling back the layers, you start peeling back the onions. So in terms of objection understanding techniques, I think just throw it back at them and see what they tell you a second time, and then start peeling back the onion, going through the layers and trying to understand where it really comes from and what we can do.
Yeah.
I think salespeople, we're limited on our influence on a client. People talk about creating urgency. I don't think we create urgency, we uncover urgency.
Nice.
If a CTO of a multinational bank has a budget problem, some 25-year-old AE from a tech startup isn't going to convince him otherwise.
Yeah.
We can ask questions that challenge that, and we can try and understand where that's coming from. But if the budget cycle means that we have to start the conversation up again in 3 months, let's get that nailed in now. Let's try and understand what's going to be different between now and 3 months.
Yeah.
So we're not having the same conversation in 3 months' time.
Yeah.
But this idea that you're going to be able to say some sort of magic words that means a CIO or a CTO of whatever bank is actually then going to go spend the money with you, I think can be a little bit naive.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's a really, really good point. I think your point is really good. I now hate the phrase objection handle, but now I've got it doesn't feel politically right now as well, now the way you've said it. But anyway, let's move on. So you've uncovered the objection, and now you're going to go for a close. 3 months later, you've got them all the way. He's really, really excited, the CIO that you've been pitching. So what's happening? What's your kind of closing question? How do you get that over the line?
So my closing question, I'm going to give credit to a guy I used to work with at Blue Optima called Stefan Peretti. Mm-hmm. And his question was, this feels more like a nice to have rather than a need to have.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a couple things around this question. You have to set the expectations at the beginning of the call around what next steps would look like. So if we're talking about slightly earlier on in the sales cycle, maybe you're doing the qualification call and you set the expectations around if there is some good alignment here, we'd look to move towards a demo and start getting in some wider stakeholders.
Yep.
So that's first thing you have to do. The second thing you have to do is leave yourself enough time at the end of the call to sort of use the question effectively.
Yep.
Because when you ask, this feels more like a... So the other caveat is potentially if there is so much alignment here, they have so much pain, they have so much business need to put your solution in place, then go ahead and nail in those next steps. At the beginning of the call, we talked about putting in a demo. This feels like the obvious thing to do. Let's get it locked in.
Yep.
If you're a little bit unsure, if the pain you've uncovered isn't strong enough, if the signals you're getting aren't convincing enough, if you hit them with this feels like a nice to have, not a need to have, you're going to get two responses. You're going to get agreement. Yes, this is a nice to have at the moment. The first thing that does is it helps unqualify them, and you can focus your time on more meaningful opportunities. But you can ask the question, okay, what changes this to a need to have? What's going to change in between now and 6 months' time where you're going to be giving me a call back, because I want to be ready for that.
Yeah, so smart.
Alternatively, they correct you. No. This is a need to have. We need this now. Yeah. And then you can ask the question, oh, sorry, I must have missed something here. Apologies. Why do you say this is a need to have? Catch me up to speed here. And again, if it's convincing enough, then you can book in that demo. But yeah, I think it's a really nice way to end a call when you're not quite certain whether you should be locking in those next steps. Everyone's time is precious. Their time is precious. Your time is precious. We don't want to be doing demos to people that aren't going to buy.
Yeah. Sales is all about the not sure area, I think. If you've spoken to someone and said, we definitely need this, it's definitely going to happen, let's just sign up now, you probably didn't need to be part of that process.
Yeah.
If you can be in that conversation and you're not sure through a lot of it, but you feel like you could be getting closer and you could be uncovering something, that's you selling, that's you earning your salary, that's you earning your bonus. And I think most salespeople will do a demo and go, well, they didn't want it, so what are you going to do about it? But in the scenario where they do just say, yeah, we'll do it, you didn't need to be there. Yeah. So I think that's why I really love that approach. I think it's really smart. Okay, and finally, the mistake you'll never make again on a pitch. Give us your teachings, words of wisdom for people not to make the same mistake you have.
Answering customer questions.
Brilliant.
With a caveat, no. So in sales, one of the main things we have to do is understanding the why, and that's understanding the why behind anything. So when a customer asks a question, there's probably a reason why they're asking that question. And I'm going to use a relevant Blue Optima example, and we'll get asked the question, does this measure down to the developer level? And you get really excited when you hear that question. It's, yeah, it does. We collect information at the commit level, which means we can look at individual developer performance. And you've got a big smile on your face because you've answered their question. And then they'll turn around and look at you and go, yeah, we don't like that. We don't want to measure at the individual performance. We think that leads to poor culture, and we just want to be looking at team level metrics. So for that reason, we don't think Blue Optima is the right solution for us.
Yeah.
Whereas if you took a step back and you had tried to understand why the customer asked that question, why do you ask that? Are you interested in measuring at the developer level? They then tell you, nope, we're interested in looking at the team things. We're worried about the culture that would create.
Yeah.
And you take the conversation from there. So my piece of advice is don't be too quick to answer customer questions. Try and understand the why behind them. The one caveat that is you can't do it to every single question you ask, because you'll end up getting on their poor side, and you'll be really annoying, and you'll peeve them off a little bit. So pick your time.
Yeah,
there are some questions you can ask. There are some questions you can answer straight away.
Yeah.
But you'll learn the ones where you can probably you need to dig a little bit further.
Yeah, brilliant advice. It's I've been in so many pitches where they're like, does it do this? And I've just said yes, and they're like, oh well, we've already got something that does that. No, it does other things. Yeah. And then you've lost them, because what they were trying to do is you get the buyers who are on the call to understand why they shouldn't buy you, rather than going, why should I buy you? And that's a really great example of how not to get caught out when that's happening.
Yeah.
And that's where that's really prevalent, is normally on the second or third pitch, of where you've met one person who's really loving it, really excited, And then you get to the next person and they're like, oh, this looks like a lot of work to put in. I want to find the reasons why we shouldn't do it. Yeah. And it's those questions you need to look out for. Awesome. Alex, well, thank you very much for joining us on the Off Script podcast. And I'm sure those words of wisdom will help many an AE out. So thank you very much.
Pleasure. I'm not sure I describe them as words of wisdom, but yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
They're better than most. Thanks, Al. Bye.